So it looks like we're on the play here with a hand that we're going to have to ship. No white source. So let's hope our 6 is better. And unfortunately, we still don't have a white source in our hand. It's pretty unlucky. So the question becomes, is this a keepable hand on 6? I'm not someone that really likes to mulligan to 5 because your chances of winning really do dramatically decrease. And we play a reasonable amount of white sources in our deck, plus we have a scry. So we would basically be looking at the scry and then 2 more draw steps pretty much to find the white source by turn 3, which would be maybe enough to keep us going. Optimally, we would have the white source next turn so we could play Thalia or Leonin Arbiter, but I think we're just going to have to keep it in hope to find that white source. Obviously, we're going to have to bottom the Sarah Avenger, and we will proceed hoping that the top of our deck is kind, and if not, we will at least be able to glean some information in terms of what our opponent's up to. And it looks like probably Storm is what we're up against. So if we draw the white source, we're in decent shape. And there it is. Woo! Alright, so we drew the white source. And I like just playing Thalia here. We've already seen Sleight of Hand. Our opponent may not have great ways of taking Thalia out. Sometimes Storm just has Lightning Bolts, or even doesn't have Lightning Bolt and just has Grape Shot in terms of ways to kill Thalia. Although Goblin Electromancer is pretty annoying because it kind of stops Thalia from working. It essentially trades the 1 mana more for the 1 mana less from the Electromancer. So we're just going to go ahead and attack, and then the question becomes, do we want to play a Leonin Arbiter this turn or play an Aven Mind Sensor? Playing Mind Sensor is the more attractive option. So it does mean that our opponent could potentially combo us out this turn. But yeah, let's just go ahead and hold up Aven Mind Sensor. Hopefully that'll work out. And so there is the Pyromancer's Ascension for 3 mana. And if our opponent does make an attack, we actually now have the option of flashing in the Mind Sensor, and we can just go ahead and block, which I like doing. The Goblin Electromancer is pretty annoying here. So we can trade there, and now I think the opportunity to play Leonin Arbiter and Ghost Quarter the Steam Vents is pretty enticing. Let's just go ahead and do that. Just to basically cripple our opponent's mana. Mana denial is one of the key components of any Hatebears strategy, pretty much. And so the Thalia, even though our opponent has Pyromancer's Ascension, it's going to be hard to really get that going. Sleight of Hand is going to put 1 counter on Ascension. But we've got a solid enough clock where I think we're in a reasonable position still. So Path to Exile doesn't do a ton for us. Remember that our non-creature spells also cost 2 more as well. So the option now becomes either Kitchen Finks or Sarah Avenger. So let's just go ahead and play the Finks. I don't think it's going to end up mattering too much one way or the other. We have 7 damage on board next turn. So I'll be pretty impressed if our opponent can stop us from just winning next turn, to be honest. That sleight of hand, yes, it puts 2 counters on Pyromancer's Ascension, but pretty sure the writing's on the wall here for this game. Okay, so got game 1 on the back of Thalia and a timely top-decked White Source. So, time for game 2. The first card I want to take out here is Aether Vial because our opponent doesn't have a ton of counter magic, and it doesn't seem particularly necessary in this matchup. There are cards that seem like effective tools in the matchup as well. Rest in Peace is nice at stopping Past in Flames and Pyromancer's Ascension. I like Judge's Familiar as just a way of slowing our opponent down. Spellskite we don't really need because our opponent doesn't have a ton of removal really for us. Sundering Growth kills Pyromancer's Ascension, so it probably comes in. So let's see. If we board in the growths, we can probably afford to take out Kitchen Finks, although we'll look at what we would be swapping the Finks for. Path is only okay. Dismember is actually better than Path. And we're basically just looking at having ways at dealing with Goblin Electromancer here. So, let's see. The Mirroring Crusader is pretty solid as just a 3-mana, 4-damage creature. Angel of Jubilation is a bit slow. We could consider cutting maybe 1 or 2. Well, we only are playing 2, so we could consider cutting them, essentially, for maybe something like Core Firewalker. Although, the Jubilation, we have a lot of creatures, so it could be pretty sweet. Let's see, is there anything else we're really going to miss? No, I think I like this configuration. Don't think we need to go the Crucible route. So, let's try this. Thalia is still our best card against Storm. Rest in Peace is also very good. Decided to keep in the Sword of Fire and Ice. Maybe that was wrong. So, looking at this opening hand, we have a couple ways of dealing with Goblin Electromancer, and then a couple of slower win conditions. But we have to ask ourselves, is this a hand that's going to beat a good draw coming out of Storm involving Pyromancer's Ascension? And I think ultimately the answer there is probably not. We probably have to draw something. So I think we can afford to take 1 mulligan, and we're going to have to keep this 6. It's pretty similar to our 7, to be honest. So we'll just have to see what type of hand our opponent kept. If it is a hand with an Ascension backed up by a number of Storm spells, we're going to be in trouble since we've got a few of our clunkier cards in the matchup. Sword of Fire and Ice and Angel of Jubilation are a couple of the slower cards. We're not playing that many of those types of cards, but we did draw a number of them here. Sword is a 1 of, so is Eldrazi Displacer, and Angel's a 2 of. So kind of a clunky arrangement here. And the reason why I played the Castle rather than the Mutavault is we could draw the Sundering Growth And at that point, we would want to have double white in case our opponent does have Pyromancer's Ascension for this turn. And it is going to be Goblin Electromancer instead. But Electromancer's still bad news. So, just going to go ahead and play the cards we can. The cards in our hand it's all we can really do here. And we're a little bit at the mercy of our opponent now. And it looks like this could be one of those turns where our opponent's able to storm off. We'll see. And it was smart to go ahead and sacrifice the Scalding Tarn earlier. Obviously, with Leonin Arbiter, fetch lands are a little bit of a liability. There's a Lightning Bolt. So our board's clear. Let's see if our opponent has a way to capitalize here on basically us having a clunky draw and our not having a removal spell for this Electromancer. And now our opponent is able to fetch because the Arbiter's off the table. So it could be that our opponent's boarded in something like Empty the Warrens as a win condition. Past in Flames would still be a win condition, although it looks like just a second copy of Goblin Electromancer is the play here. So I like just playing Eldrazi Displacer. We could play Flicker Wisp or Sword alternatively, but the Displacer can block the Electromancers, plus with Angel can attack for 4. So still kind of at the mercy of what our opponent's up to. But we're somewhat lucky that it looks like no Pyromancer's Ascension has been found yet. The keyword there being yet. That's normally the card that you lose to is this Ascension, but Past in Flames is also another way we can lose. Let's see what was discarded to the Desperate Ravings. Looks like Serum Visions. So, yeah, it was Serum Visions and Thought Scour discarded. So, a lot of our opponent has drawn has been cantrips this game, it looks like. And we drew Thalia this turn, which is interesting because we may actually not want to play it. The options are we could play Thalia, but our opponent has double Electromancer. So that only does so much. I kind of like just playing the Angel and continuing with our beatdown plan. Angel is a bit slow, but it makes the Eldrazi Displacer into a 4/4. And we can't play any 2 of our spells this turn. So, might as well play the 4 mana one. And then next turn we could potentially either double spell or play the Sword and just attack our opponent for lethal. Because Sword having protection from blue and red there is a big deal. But it does look like Pyromancer's Ascension was found. And so Desperate Ritual is going to trigger the Ascension. So that's 1 counter on Ascension. Let's see if our opponent can... Okay, there's a Rending Volley. That's pretty annoying, because our opponent actually has another Rending Volley in the graveyard. And so, yeah, the Ravings is going to be copied here. So Yeah, it looks like our opponent's going to be able to go off this turn, most likely. Even if we had played Thalia, our opponent would have just Rending Volleyed the Thalia, and that wouldn't have done much either. But we'll see. Desperate Ravings plus multiple Goblin Electromancers plus Pyromancer's Ascension seems pretty good. So it's pretty unlikely we're going to be able to win this game. Just kind of clicking through. Our opponent would likely has either Rape Shot or Empty the Warrens in their deck as a win condition. Plus, let's see, are all the Ravings gone from the graveyard? Yeah, it looks like all the Desperate Ravings are gone from the graveyard. So here's a Lightning Bolt to take out our only threat. Looks like an attack for 4. And wondering if our opponent has something more for this turn. Okay, no. So, we were given at least a draw step to try to do something. I like just playing 2 threats here, or we could play Flicker Wisp alternatively and blink the Pyromancer's Ascension. So I kind of like just playing the Flicker Wisp here. And we can blink the Ascension, which makes it harder to get the Ascension back online. Alternatively, we could have played Thalia and Sarah Avenger. But I think I like this more. Okay, there's a 3rd Electromancer. And, okay, it is going to be Past in Flames. It looks like our opponent has a pretty stocked graveyard here. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to go to the next game. So, looking at our sideboard, do we really want to make any significant changes? That certainly wasn't our best draw that past game. We didn't draw Thalia, didn't draw Rest in Peace, likely our best cards in the matchup. Also didn't draw a removal spell for Electromancer. We maybe do just want to go ahead and board in the 4th Path, even as just an answer for Electromancer. Because we're just kind of trying to answer the Electromancer and the Ascension. So we could just board in Path for something like the Eldrazi Displacer, which was fine. It wasn't anything absurd or anything like that. But not going to change too much here. And we are in the play here, which is nice. This hand, it's okay. It's not great. Gonna keep it on the back of Leonin Arbiter plus Ghost Quarter stuff, because it is a 4-land 3-spell hand, but at the same time, it's definitely has some issues. This hand has some issues. We don't have Thalia or Rest in Peace once again. or removal spell for Goblin Electromancer. So, hoping to draw well. And this Leanin' Arbiter should be good. It should be good. Unless our opponent plays like a lightning bolt on it. So we're just going to run it out there, and then we'll make the decision next turn if we want to start ghost quartering stuff or playing one of our 3-mana creatures. Flicker Wisp is nice at Blinking Pyromancer's Ascension is nice. So there is a Rending Volley, which is bad news for us, because that takes away our Arbiter, which was one of the cards we were banking on winning the game with. Although we did draw Thalia. So, do we want to play Thalia or not this turn? I kind of want to just play the Blade Splicer here. It is somewhat risky, but just getting a clock on our opponent is definitely pretty important. And it's pretty hard to combo off without Electromancer or Ascension in play. That's not to say it's not possible, it's just quite difficult. And it could be that our opponent has another Rending Volley, because we saw multiple Rending Volleys in the previous game. So, holding Thalia seems fine. And there's Goblin Electromancer. And it looks like our opponent is just going to pass the turn. So we drew Aven Mindcensor, which is a pretty good draw. Let's just go ahead and attack here with a Golem. Can't get in with the Blade Splicer. And we have a couple of options here in terms of what we want to play for our turn. We can play Aven Mindcensor plus Ghost Quarter a land. We could Flicker Wisp Blade Splicer and get a bunch of creatures in play, or we could just play Thalia. Out of those options, I think I like playing the Aven Mindcensor the best. They're all reasonable options. We're hoping, obviously, that our opponent bricks off here. So we were hoping that our opponent bricked on that Ghost Quarter in terms of finding a basic land in the top 4 cards, but as it happens, our opponent did find a basic in the top 4 cards. So that's pretty annoying. And now Serum Visions could prove problematic for us. This could be a turn our opponent's able to combo off. Yeah, the interaction between Thalia and Goblin Electromancer is pretty interesting. And the Rending Volley is annoying, although that also means that we didn't really have an opportunity to land one of our other threats. So just going to continue the beatdown here with the Golem. And we're just going to want to go ahead and add the Thalia and the Judge's Familiar. Even though we could Flicker Wisp our Blade Splicer, which would be more potential damage. I like having the additional interaction in play. So having both Thalia and Judge's Familiar to potentially sacrifice seems like where we want to be here. If we had a removal spell for the Electromancer, we'd be in amazing shape. Because then our opponent would really have trouble dealing with our board. As it is, Electromancer is potentially a way for our opponent to combo off, as our opponent does still have 6 cards in hand. 6 spells, presumably. And these Flicker Wisps aren't really doing a whole lot this game. So we'll see what the play is going to be here. Pyretic Ritual. We can go ahead and let that one resolve. We could have countered it with Judge's Familiar, but it seems like it could be a bait spell more than anything. And our Thalia is stopping our opponent from doing a ton here. So it'll be interesting to see. Okay, Manamorphose. Gonna go ahead and let it resolve. And there's Pyromancer's Ascension, so not really that scary of a turn for us overall. So pretty happy we didn't sacrifice the Judge's Familiar. And drew a Mutavault for the turn. So we can definitely represent lethal next turn. And it's going to be pretty hard for our opponent to get 2 counters on the Ascension and then go off again, essentially. But we also don't really have any great blinks with the Flicker Wisp besides our Blade Splicer. There's not really too much to be gained from sacrificing this Ghost Quarter, as presumably our opponent does have another basic land to find. So yeah, just going to pass the turn here. Pretty happy with our spot. We've got Judge's Familiar and Thalia. And our opponent's all the way down to 4. So while Storm, you would think would be a pretty bad matchup for a mono-white deck, we've got so much interaction that it's actually not that bad. And Sleight of Hand is not going to help trigger Pyromancer's Ascension. Of course, Thalia and the Goblin Electromancer basically nullify each other out, so Thalia doesn't really do anything to prevent the Sleight of Hand from casting 1. And we see that our opponent did have another basic, but here's a Manamorphose, and there's really no need for us to let this resolve. Let's just go ahead and counter it. And it looks like our opponent is going to concede.